So let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. Before we go ahead and get started, we wanted to connect to the YouTube and to the Rumble and to the Twitter. Of course, we were already live on Locals for a little bit, but it looks like it is functional, which is tremendous news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about two stories. One, FTX, and the very interesting plea deal that was entered by Caroline Ellison. She was FTX SBF's Sam Bankman-Fried's lover, I guess, and she pled guilty in the Southern District of New York, and they did this whole thing under seal. And so we're just getting eyes on what the actual proceeding looked like. We have a copy of the plea deal that she signed, as well as a summary of the plea proceeding that took place. Of course, all this took place under seal. Sam Bankman-Fried had not even been picked up yet when Caroline Ellison and others were pleading guilty. Presumably, they are turning on Sam, and they'll be testifying against him. That's why the government wanted to secure the plea. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll go through Sam's criminal case update, because a couple things happened. Of course, he's out on bond, a $250 million bond, and evidently he's at his parents' house, and they're all real concerned. They've got security guards. People are like, I'm going to kill that son of a bee, and they don't want people coming in there, messing around, because obviously a lot of people are mad that, $40 billion of liquidity got evaporated. So we'll go through that. We also have an order of recusal. There's going to be a new judge assigned to the case. The current judge, or the former judge, was married to somebody who did some work for Sam. Oh, man. So that judge had to nuke herself off the case. The new judge came in, and we will talk about that story as well, because the new judge is a familiar judge that we've talked about historically. So we'll talk about that. Alameda, apparently some of their wallets are moving around, and the New York Times continues to slobber all over SBF. And so we'll talk about all of that in the first segment. Then in the second segment, very interesting story that came out today. It's that Zelensky is going to be appearing at the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2023. And Zelensky's already done this before. He has appeared over at Davos before. He did that in 2022. We will refresh our recollection on that story and see what he was asking for back then. But then we'll go back through and recollect our memories on this fella, Klaus Schwab. Now, there's always clips of him percolating all around the internet, and we will see several of them. One, Klaus Schwab on Shaping the Future. Another one where he had a big interview with the individual you see here, Albert Bourla, the Pfizer CEO. They talked for about, quite a bit. And we have about 4-minute clip on that one that we'll go through. And then we'll hear from a woman called Vandana Shiva. She said that in India, a lot of the World Economic Forum policies have already been implemented, and it has been a big, big problem for them. So we'll go through all of that and more. And my friends, if you want to be a part of the show, the best place to do that is by going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where we have an awesome community chatting away. And so big shout outs go out to Uncle Shane. We have John McGarvey's in the house. Al Gore's also over there. Let's see what Al Gore posted. Al Gore's in the house. Here's a selfie of Al Gore, because the whole country's frozen. Yeah, that's what's going on over there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. That came in from C. Reed over there. And yeah, all right, so cool. So we had some emails flying around. It looks like all right. Anyways, okay, so former LEO's back in the house. All right, we're glad you're back, former LEO. We were checking on you. I think it's a real email. All right. So anyways, my friends, as you can see, there's a lot to get to. Let's cue this puppy up so we can just get right into it. And here's what we've got. We're starting with FTX. Sam Bankman-Fried, of course, he's being charged with a number of crimes for evaporating tens of billions of dollars, and a lot of people unhappy about it. We're following along in this case. We know that his alleged lover or partner or co-conspirator, Caroline Ellison, took a plea deal. So we are going to read through that and go through the allocution, which is the court proceeding where she actually entered this on the record. All of that was done under seal because they didn't have their hands on Sam Bankman-Fried at the time. Sam Bankman-Fried was still in the Bahamas while his ex was pleading guilty and just fraternizing with the Southern District of New York prosecutors. So we'll go through that first. But I want to start with the actual criminal case. And let me do a quick refresh on this because some of my links are not in here. And that feels strange. Yes. Okay. Here we go. Now the links are back. So this is the criminal case appearing on Sam Bankman-Fried, and you can see a lot of activity. So let's fast forward back to before the holiday. Several things happened. All right. The first thing I want to start with is on December 22nd. Remember that Sam Bankman-Fried was being transported back from the Bahamas, where he was lounging it up there. There was a minute entry that came out. He came back, and there was a notice of appearance. Bail was set as follows: $250 million, co-signed by 4 financially responsible persons, 1 non-family, and also secured by the parents' home in Palo Alto. This is how he got out of custody. Travel is restricted to and from the Southern District of New York, so he can go basically across the country, back and forth. Palo Alto, California, travel. He can get on an airplane, go to Southern District or Eastern District, but only for court appearances. Okay, he's not going down to Wall Street or anything. He can also go to the Northern District of California. Sam also had to surrender travel documents, no new applications for visas or passports, strict pretrial supervision, which means he's going to be checking in with somebody on a regular basis. And, sort of depending on the specifics, we'll take a look at it at the actual form, but, he's actually got a person that he's checking in with regularly. Pretrial services. Mental health evaluation and treatment as directed by pretrial services. So they'll do an interview of him and then they'll say, all right, you're feeling a little bit suicidal to us. So it's probably useful that we have you analyzed by somebody. Defendant is not to possess any firearms or any other destructive devices or weapons. And also the location monitoring technology needs to be installed on his person. Defendant lives in his parents' home, California, to be supervised from that district. They may also exercise discretion to allow the defendant to leave his home for exercise so he can go work out, which I recommend for him. Defendant is not allowed to open up new lines of credit, open a business, or enter into any financial transactions in excess of $1,000 without pre-approval from the court. He can pay legal fees. Equity interest in the parent's home has to be posted by this January, so coming up this month. 1/12/23. Fried is going to be released on his own signature, plus a signature of parents to surrender the passport, installation of electronic monitoring conditions, all done by January 5th. Now we have another conference scheduled before the U.S. District Judge on 1/3, 2 p.m. Speedy trial time excluded, meaning they're not trying to rush this thing through, all the way through until 1/3. So a big slew of notice of appearances. You see a number of individuals are jumping on into the case. So it looks like he's got Nicholas Weirley. This is actually the lawyer for Caroline. We had another lawyer for Caroline and another lawyer for Gary Wang. They all submitted their notices of appearance. This is what the bond paperwork looks like. Filed 12/22, just a few short days before Christmas. The U.S. attorney assigned to the case is Nicholas Roos. Defendant, Sam Bankman-Fried. He's there in person, of course. He had already gotten picked up by U.S. authorities before he was brought into court. Now, take a look at this name. Wow, I just caught this. Defendant's counsel, Mark Cohen, is on board. But remember this name, my friends, who's been around the channel for some time? Christian Everdell. That wouldn't be the same Christian Everdell that represented Ghislaine Maxwell, would it? I think it probably is. Christian Everdell. Cohen. It is. He moved law firms, I think. This is him. He was the same fella, I believe, who represented Ghislaine Maxwell. He's now over at Cohen and Gressner's White Collar Defense Regulation. He went to Harvard, and Princeton. Great. And he's a member of the Digital Currency and Ledger Defense Coalition. I'm pretty sure that guy represented Ghislaine Maxwell. We covered him in depth. So this says that the time of the presentment of Sam Bankman-Fried was at 1:05 p.m. Bail disposition is as follows. Agreed upon conditions of release, $250 million. We've got 4 people signing off on it. 1 is non-family. The cash property is the parent's home in Palo Alto. He can travel for court appearances. Pretrial supervision is very strict. Mental health evaluations, home detention. He's also supposed to be monitored on location. Can't possess any firearms. Also can be released, but has to surrender passport and so on. Here are some additional proceeding comments. 2 non-parent sureties to sign bonds and lesser amounts to be agreed to. Defendant to live in parent's home, Palo Alto, Northern District of California, and to be supervised from that district. Pretrial Services Office may exercise discretion to allow the defendant to leave home for exercise. So pretrial services could revoke that. They could say, hey, sorry, sit back on your butt, buddy boy. You're not behaving. Defendant, no new lines of credit, no new businesses, no financial transactions over $1,000, except with pre-approval of the government or the court. Equity interest in parents' homes to be posted by 1/12/23. So we've got another conference then scheduled on 1/3, right after the new year, signed off on by the judge. Now, what's funny about this is evidently there is activity. So he's not supposed to be moving money around over $1,000. But if you take a look at this came over from Ergo BTC. This is just a user on Twitter. And Ergo BTC says that Alameda, which was the other part of FTX, essentially, it was FTX and Alameda. FTX was the crypto exchange that many consumers used. And then you had the Alameda, which was sort of the investment hedge fund. So Alameda now, once all these people are out, their ETH addresses, which is one type of crypto, are digging around in the sofa for spare change. Uh-oh. So, of course, as we know, on blockchain, on crypto, right? In crypto, you can see what's happening on the blockchain. Most cryptos are on sort of public ledgers. So everybody can get on block explorers and go see what's happening. People have identified the wallets, basically the accounts for Alameda. And they're now digging around in the sofa. They're saying, oh, well, this is curious. So they're now seeing actually people moving money around, right? Long story short, people are referencing all the different accounts and nobody knows who's exactly doing it or who's moving what. But you see right here, Alameda Research 24, Alameda Research, following the transfers. So somebody's moving some money. People are moving money around. And it's just sort of a matter of some forensic accounting to track it all down and see where it goes. Anything that's not tied to the border Alameda cluster is getting swept under multiple addresses. Basically, they're trying to cover their tracks, right? They're trying to smash this stuff through and cover it up. So that's the bond paperwork. We see speedy trial excluded. This all taking place December 22nd. So that's for SBF. SBF, of course, is now brought into custody. And we're asking ourselves about the judge who was put on the case. One of the judges is no longer going to be there. So we saw the notices of appearance. On December 22nd, SBF landed in court and posted bond. Appearance bond was entered, $250 million. Several people, 4 people financially responsible, one non-family. They all posted it. Then we have December 22nd. There was a superseding indictment. And there were guilty pleas. All took place on 12/22. What the heck? That's interesting. The court granted the government's application and there was pleas of guilty. They say at the time their pleas were entered, the court granted this government's application and certain parts of the plea agreement are redacted. Let's take a look. That's another document. Let's take a look. We'll come back to this one. This is regarding Caroline Ellison's plea deal. We have another conference that's scheduled in early January. and there was a recusal of the judge. Let's take a look here. Yes. So right after Sam posts bond, on December 23rd, we get an order of recusal. Sam Bankman-Fried, Gary Wang, and Caroline Ellison's cases. The court writes as follows. Judge Ronnie Abrams, U.S. District Court Judge out of the Southern District of New York, filed this on 12/22, days before Christmas, 3 pages long. Says in the following order. Judge Abrams says, all right, everybody. Okay, government, U.S., and Sam, and Caroline, and Gary. On December 19th, Ellison and Wang, they waived their indictment and they consented to the filing of a superseding information. And they pled guilty to each of the counts with which they were charged. Right. And so this happened very quickly. So, on this channel, we talk a lot about we see, criminal complaints filed. An FBI agent will write a search warrant and then they'll draft this big long narrative and they file that as a complaint and they go arrest somebody. Or you'll see an indictment, right? They'll present evidence to a grand jury and the grand jury will say, nope, that's criminality and it's indictment, right? So they're trying to establish a base layer for prosecuting somebody. You can waive all of that, right? You don't have to go through an indictment. You don't have to go through a criminal direct complaint. You can just waive all of it. And they did that. Caroline Ellison and Gary Wang, they got in contact, like their defense lawyers, the U.S. prosecutors, they got in contact and they hashed this whole thing out. They said, listen, if you come work for us, if you testify against SBF, we'll give you the deal of the century or something, is how I guess this conversation went. And their defense lawyers were like, you guys have to take this right now. And they did. They waived the indictment. There's no probable cause finding. They just said, you've got us, we're guilty. Now, at the time that their pleas were entered, the court granted the government's application that the filings and the transcripts of the plea allocutions would be temporarily sealed, and docketing would be delayed until such time that SBF was extradited from the Bahamas, finding that premature exposure of cooperation could hinder ongoing law enforcement efforts. All right, yeah, so I'm getting two documents conflated right now. But anyways, we'll keep going. The government now requests that the plea agreements include certain limited redactions upon unsealing. Defendant Ellison additionally requests the redaction of health-related information from the transcript of her plea allocution. For the following reasons, the court grants both of those applications. They give us some standards. They say, although there's a qualified right of the public to see these things, and we really want to see all of these materials, the redactions may jeopardize ongoing investigations by the government. They may be justified. Courts in this district have recognized medical and health-related information, have given those things great protection. The Second Circuit has also found that there could be sealed materials in certain cases. So in this case, in SBF and Caroline Ellison's case, the government here says that disclosure of portions of both of Ellison and Wang's plea agreements could undermine its active investigation. The judge says, having reviewed the redactions proposed by the government, the court determines that they are limited. They consist of no more of several lines in each plea agreement, which we're going to look at, and they are narrowly tailored to serve a compelling law enforcement interest. The sensitivity of an ongoing investigation justifies sealing. And the government has also represented that the limited redactions will be limited in duration and that they're going to unseal more of this once sealing is no longer necessary to advance law enforcement interests. The court has also reviewed the redactions proposed by Caroline Ellison and her plea allocution and says that those redactions are appropriate as well. Accordingly, for the reasons articulated above, the court grants the government's request to redact certain portions of the plea agreement and the transcript, but everything else shall be unsealed. All right. All that took place on December 22nd. Honorable Ronnie Abrams, the U.S. District Judge. So we're going to go through both of those. We have the allocution, courtesy of Inner City Press, and we also have the actual plea deal, courtesy of the prosecutors. But the judge, Honorable Ronnie Abrams, is sort of acknowledging that there's some sensitive things that were in those documents, and so some of those redactions are appropriate. But there was another portion of this, of a recusal. Yes, okay. Notice of case reassignment. This is the order of recusal. And do I not have the PDF of this? Let's see if I can grab it real quick. If we log in here, we want to get the order of recusal from the court. Huh. And it can't locate it for whatever reason. So we will just read from the minute entry. Here's what the minute entry says. Regarding the order of recusal. So the judge is not going to be there anymore. Judge Ronnie Abrams says, it has come to the court's attention that the law firm of Davis, Polk, and Wardwell, at which my husband is a partner, advised FTX in 2021, as well as represented parties that may be adverse to FTX and defendant Bankman-Fried in other proceedings. They say, my husband has had no involvement in any of these representations. These matters are confidential and their substance is unknown to the court. Nonetheless, to avoid any possible conflict or the appearance of one, the court hereby recuses itself from this action. Therefore, Judge Ronnie Abrams is recused. And that's not unusual, of course, but it is a good move. And the judge has been replaced by another person. And that individual is Lewis Kaplan, who you see here. So Judge Abrams is off the case, and Lewis Kaplan also makes his way back. Now, as we saw with one of the lawyers who was representing SBF, his name is Christian Everdell. We saw that he was somebody representing Ghislaine Maxwell at one point, along with Bobby Sternheim and others. We covered that trial at length. But now the judge is also involved or was connected to other Epstein-linked cases. All of this was out of the Southern District of New York, which is where the Ghislaine Maxwell case was brought. We also saw the judge is married to somebody whose law firm was also communicating or representing FTX or people with interest adverse to FTX. It's all this big, disgusting web. Everybody's involved in it. So here's another story about this judge. Bankman-Fried criminal case is reassigned to another judge, the same judge in the Bin Laden and the Epstein-linked cases. SBF is a Democrat donor so generous that in March 2021, at Vox, they called SBF among the people most responsible for Joe Biden being in office. Spent hundreds of millions to buy favors, influence, and media support. Hardly a surprise when we learned last week that Judge Ronnie Abrams, appointed by Barack, recused herself from prosecuting SBF in his upcoming criminal case due to her work of her husband, Greg Andres' law firm, Davis Polk. They did work for FTX. Also, before joining Davis Polk, Andre served as the assistant special counsel for Russian interference in the 2016 United States elections under Robert Mueller. It's just this big pool of just everybody. So you fast forward to today, SBF's criminal case was reassigned to Bill Clinton-appointed District Judge Lewis Kaplan. He's recently known for handling an Epstein-linked abuse lawsuit against Prince Andrew, which we covered a lot here, and defamation lawsuits against Donald. And it's also known for presiding over a number of federal racketeering cases, mafia members, and so on, including the 14 Gambino crime family members arrested on a bunch of charges, 1992 trial of John Gotti, and trafficking of a minor. This is a photograph of him. He's 78, no-nonsense demeanor. He's held senior status in the Manhattan federal court for over a decade, oversees 2 civil lawsuits, many people accusing Trump of things. Kaplan recently also oversaw Virginia Giuffre's civil lawsuit accusing Prince Andrew of abusing her when she was 17. Andrew declared never met her. Kaplan refused Andrew's request to toss the lawsuit, but they ultimately settled. Kaplan presided over the first cases where there were Guantanamo captives, and he sentenced a Bitcoin securities fraud prosecution. Somebody got 18 months in prison there. Blocked U.S. courts from being used to collect a $9 billion settlement. Has he done anything on the J6 cases? Let's see. Kaplan presided over the fall civil trial of Kevin Spacey. Jury sided with Spacey. Last week, the DOJ accused him of a number of crimes, and he's not entered a plea. All right, so that's going to be the judge now, who is, of course, assigned to the case, and we'll see what he does. Now, the arraignment, the initial appearance will just be basic. You know, the judge will just probably set new dates, and I would imagine maintain the current release conditions so that Sam can hang out and do whatever he does. But boy, the media is still slobbering all over this guy. It's kind of disgusting. The New York Times, they posted this on Twitter. Here's what they said. In the United States, Sam Bankman-Fried is persona non grata. But in interviews across the Bahamas, residents say that his crimes were hardly comparable to the gang violence of the island, and they express fears of economic fallout if crypto investors don't return. Man, poor guy. Poor Bahamas. Man, they want their crypto bros back there. And Sam, you know, even though a bunch of people here, you know, unsophisticated people like myself in the United States who might think that Sam Bankman-Fried is, you know, a massive criminal, they're kind of sympathetic in this. He should probably return back to the Bahamas. Probably should let him out so he can give him all his money back. Otherwise, there could be some economic fallout in the Bahamas. Weird. The New York Times. It's like pure propaganda. You know, residents there have generous views of the disgraced FTX founder, who's been accused of misusing billions of customer funds. It's a very strange newspaper. Let's click over and see what they have for us. We have, in the Bahamas, a lingering sympathy for SBF. Oh, what a nice guy. There's a popular phrase, money can't done, meaning the fabulous wealth makes its own rules. It's become a gleeful reference to the once high-flying SBF. From Washington to Wall Street, Fried is now persona non grata. But not so in the Bahamas, where SBF lived for the past year in a lavish gated community. Few here predicted he'd spend his final week in a prison. He's Bahamian, she added, as part of her explanation for his sympathies. I think he has a good heart, said Shamika. Miss Moss was shopping for a recent afternoon beauty supply place a few blocks from the Fox Hill prison, where Bankman-Fried was being housed. Yeah, very, very sympathetic. Okay. Strange article. What's their deal with this kid? What's the deal? Does he have something on them? Do they have something on him? Are they like in a long-term relationship that we don't know about? That's a weird thing. Slobbering New York Times all over SBF. But meanwhile, his girlfriend entered into a plea deal. And we talked about this. She already entered that plea deal under seal, right? And all of that was done in secret. And so now let's take a look at the actual plea deal itself. But right after we listen to our friends over at 4 Patriots, we're going to go to Ellison's plea deal. We're going to come back. We're going to go through the allocution, which is brought to us by Inner City Press, right after a short water break and message from our friends at 4 Patriots. My friends, a food shortage could be coming. Even in the United States, experts have written about this as recently as July. Drought, inflation, even new policies are pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important now than ever. And you can create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits ever. This is not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25 years super survival food, hand-packed right in family-owned facilities in the United States, giving jobs to over 200 Americans. The kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, and they stack easily. They have different delicious breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and you can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com. Use code Robert to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including this 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus free shipping on orders over $97. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Go to 4patriots.com. Use code Robert to get 10% off. That's 4patriots.com. Use code Robert. Start building your own stockpile today. That's right. Get your survival food and don't starve to death out there. All right. And so now let's get right back into that plea deal, which was filed under seal. We already talked all about what that looks like, but I want to run through the actual agreement. The plea deal between Caroline Ellison and the United States Department of Justice, entered in on December 18th, is down below. This is a letter. It goes to Dear Mr. Sahini, Mr. Neiman, and others. They say, on the understandings specified below, our office of the United States Attorney out of the Southern District of New York, we will accept a guilty plea from Caroline Ellison. Here are the following counts. Count 1. On the information charges, the defendant with engaging in conspiracy to commit wire fraud, maximum time in prison, 20 years. Greatest loss of $250,000 or twice the amount. That's all for count 1. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Also, count 2 charges Caroline with wire fraud on customers of FTX. Very similar charge there. And count 3, engaging in conspiracy to commit wire fraud on Alameda. Counts 4, 5, 6, and 7 are very similar. You see count 4 is wire fraud on lenders of Alameda Research. So same type of conduct, just different victims. So you've got users, actually like sort of everyday retail consumers, and then you've got other, hedge funds, you've got Alameda, you've got FTX. Count 5 is conspiracy to commit commodities fraud. We have count 6, which is conspiracy to commit securities fraud with FTX equity investors. Count 7 is conspiracy to commit money laundering. And it's a lot of time if you add it all up. Woo! The total maximum sentence of incarceration on counts 1 through 7 for Caroline Ellison, 110 years imprisonment. Now, in plea deals, right, part of what they're doing here is they have to explain what the maximum penalties are under the law. It's very important that a defendant knows what they could be sentenced to and sort of what the range of potential penalties is in any case, and so they're communicating that to her. Now, you're going to see down at the bottom of this, they're all going to sign off on this thing. Right there it is. So Caroline Ellison says, yep, got it. And her lawyers say, yep, we got it too, right? 4 of them, all representing Caroline Ellison. They're all agreeing on this. This was drafted by the U.S. prosecutors, and they are approving this, right? So multiple people are saying these are the terms of the deal. So this is like the final contract that's going to govern everything. Now, the defendant, Caroline, agrees to waive any defenses related to venue with respect to counts 1 through 7 of the information. She's agreeing to plead guilty, so she's not going to fight jurisdiction. It's further understood that Caroline shall make restitution in the amount to be specified by the court. Shall be done on a payment plan established by the court. So how much money is she going to have to pay back? Don't know. The defendant hereby admits, Caroline admits the forfeiture allegation. With respect to counts 1 through 4, defendant agrees to forfeit to the United States any property, real property derived from any of these proceeds. Same thing with count 7. All of your stuff is going to us. All your base are belong to us now, says the government. The government prosecutor says, Caroline also understands that she shall truthfully and completely disclose all information concerning all matters about which this office inquires, which can be used for any purpose. There it is. This is the full cooperation paragraph. All right. And this is why she'll be getting a deal, right? This is what we're going to ask for at sentencing. But this is, you will cooperate with us. Any purpose, you shall completely and truthfully disclose everything, baby. Shall cooperate with this office, also the FBI, and any other law enforcement agency that we say. And Caroline, guess what? You shall, not may or could, you shall attend all meetings requested by this office. And if you don't show up to that meeting, guess what? You're in violation of your plea deal. You also shall provide to this office upon request any document, records, tangible evidence relating to anything we want. You shall truthfully testify before the grand jury at any trial or any other court proceeding when requested to do so by this office. Caroline, you shall bring to this office attention at all times that the defendant has committed, any other things going on. You should let us know about anything that has happened in your life legally. You shall commit no further crimes. Give this office information before discussing conduct, and you shall be of assistance in any criminal investigation that we want. In other words, you are ours now. We own you. They write, Caroline, it is also understood that this office cannot and does not agree not to prosecute the defendant for criminal tax violations, if any. So they're not giving her immunity for tax investigations or tax crimes. It's understood that this office, the DOJ, cannot and does not agree to not prosecute Caroline for tax stuff. However, because they're going to refer that over to the IRS. They're going to say, well, the IRS can do whatever the hell they want. We don't know what's going on here. They say, however, if Caroline fully complies with the understandings of this agreement, no testimony or other information given by Caroline or any other information received therefrom will be used against her in a criminal tax prosecution, right? So cooperate with us here, and we're not going to help the IRS prosecute you. But if they decide to prosecute you, they can. But we'll give you some immunity from using that information that you help us gain. Moreover, if Caroline fully complies with the understanding specified in this agreement, the defendant will not be further prosecuted criminally by this office for any crimes, except for criminal tax violations related to her participation in 1, a conspiracy to commit wire fraud on or about at FTX over a period of time. 2, a conspiracy to commit wire fraud in Alameda. 3, they're just relisting all of the charges. Now, I'm trying to see, so they blanked out a whole, this is a big redacted paragraph here. They say, okay, 3, a conspiracy to commit commodities fraud. 4, conspiracy to commit securities fraud. 5, conspiracy to commit money laundering. And then count 7 of the information redacted. Why do they have to redact all this? Redacted, 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 sentence picks up. Redacted, redacted to the extent that she has disclosed participation. It's understood that all uncharged conduct the court may consider at sentencing. So the prosecutors continue in this plea deal. They say, all right, this agreement does not provide any protection against prosecution for any crimes except here. So if she goes out and gets a DUI, right, that's sort of outside the scope. It's also understood that this agreement does not bind any other agencies from prosecuting. So state, federal, local prosecutors, they can bring charges. However, the DOJ will bring the cooperation of the defendant up if it is requested. All right, so like if a local, let's say, Arizona Attorney General says, we're going to go prosecute FTX. The DOJ is going to step in and say, hey, Caroline's working with us, Why don't you take it easy? It's also understood that the sentence to be imposed upon Caroline is within the sole discretion of the court. This office cannot and does not make any promise or representation as to what sentence Caroline will receive and will not recommend any specific sentence to the court. So we call this sort of no agreements, right? We're just going to go to the judge and say no agreements on this. We don't have a specific date, and leave it up to the discretion of the judge. However, this office will inform the probation office and the court of this agreement. So we're going to say, Judge, she's working with us. We're very happy with her. We're also happy with the nature of her and the extent of her activities with respect to this case. And we're also happy with her cooperation. And so in doing so, this office may use any information it deems relevant, including both before and after this agreement. So this is sort of like a hook. It's Caroline. If you don't cooperate here with us, we're going to let the court know about that. If this office determines that Caroline has provided substantial assistance in an investigation or prosecution, and if Caroline has fully complied with the understandings, this office will file a motion requesting the court to sentence the defendant in light of the factors set forth in the law. It's understood that even if such a motion is filed, the sentence to be imposed on this defendant remains within the sole discretion of the court. Moreover, nothing in this agreement limits the office's right to present and make any facts or to take any position on post-sentencing motions. The defendant hereby consents to any adjournments of her sentence as requested. They say that it's also understood that should this office determine that Caroline has not provided assistance or that Caroline has violated any provision of this agreement, we will be released and we will withdraw the defendant's guilty plea. No, that will not allow the defendant to withdraw the guilty plea, right? Caroline can't get out of this thing once it's signed. It's also understood that should this, even if she doesn't work, she can't reverse course on this, right? They're basically hooking her up big time. It's understood that should this office determine that she violated any provision, the office shall have the right to withdraw. Also understood that if Caroline commits any further crimes, or should it be determined that she gave false, incomplete, misleading testimony, or should she violate this agreement, the defendant shall thereafter be subject to additional prosecution, including perjury and obstruction of justice and lying to our people, right? And so she's gonna cooperate, and she's gonna cooperate hard. Any such prosecution that is not time barred by the statute will be brought forward. It is the intent of this agreement to waive all defenses based on statute of limitations, meaning they can prosecute her at any time. She's not barred by time. If we learn 25 years from now, they're going to try to prosecute her still. It's understood that in the event it's determined that she lied or committed other crimes, all statements made by the defendant to this office shall be admissible in evidence in any criminal proceeding, okay? So what they're essentially saying is, you're going to tell us everything, and if you tell us some things that are wrong, we're going to use the things you told us to prosecute you. It is the intent of this agreement to waive any of those rights. So she has immunity until she violates it, then that whole balloon pops. It is further understood that this office will not object to the defendant's release on the following bail conditions. So Caroline Ellison, who was SBF's ex-lover, is now turning on him, and she got released on a $250,000 personal recognizance bond. Remember, Sam's is $250 million. Dropped a few zeros off that. Travel restricted to continental United States. The defendant is to surrender all travel documents. Also can't have any new applications for new passports. She's also supervised on pretrial services. Also adheres to release conditions. The DOJ reserves the right to move without notice for revocation or modification of the bail if she violates the terms. And the defendant hereby acknowledges that she's accepted this agreement and is pleading guilty because the defendant is in fact guilty. We're going to go through the allocution, which is where the judge accepts all of this. But she's admitting everything. I'm guilty. I did it. Have mercy. I'll help. In connection with Caroline's plea of guilt, the defendant, in consultation with counsel, has chosen not to request discovery materials. Okay. She doesn't even know what's in the case file. She hasn't even seen the evidence against her. She just said, yeah, whatever you've got, I'm guilty. And that's kind of like a problem a little bit. You go, well, wait a minute. What if they don't have enough evidence and she can just plead guilty to stuff? They're understanding, right? They're waiving all of this. The defendant understands that if not for entering this plea of guilty, the government would be required to bring this evidence to you. But she acknowledges that Caroline has not and will not receive the information because she has pled guilty, and she waives the right to the information and agrees not to withdraw the plea or to attack the conviction at a later date. So I don't even care what it says. That's how guilty I know I am. The defendant recognizes that, and like I would never, typically advise that, probably unless I was in this exact situation. You always want to see what the evidence is, unless you know the evidence is going to be terrible. The defendant recognizes that if the defendant is not a citizen of the United States, it could make it likely that she gets deported. Standard immigration advisement here. Denaturalization, all this is just a big copy-paste paragraph that goes on all of these. This agreement supersedes any prior understandings. No additional understandings have been entered. All signed by everybody. Caroline Ellison entering the guilty plea 12/19/2022 in the Southern District of New York. And that's where things got a little bit interesting because she has to now, like, that's just the agreement. That's just a conversation back and forth between her lawyers and the government, the DOJ. But now they've got to go bring this in front of the judge, and the judge has to accept everything. And this is done in a change of plea proceeding. And this was done very, very quickly. And just like we did with Lynn Maxwell, we also go back to our friend at Inner City Press, who regularly reports from the Southern District of New York. And he was in there taking pictures of the terminal. Okay, this is literally the user terminal in the building in order to get copies of the transcripts. So shout out to at Inner City Press. Make sure you're giving him a follow. He says, all right, so here's the deal. We now have the unsealed guilty plea transcript of Caroline Ellison. Says that it was held in secret and was not docketed until today. Once Bankman-Fried was freed on a $250 million bond, Caroline Ellison, of course, enters her guilty plea. All of it happens simultaneously. They pick up Sam, they drop off the guilty plea so we can all see what happened with Caroline. Here's a screenshot, a picture from the press, from Inner City Press. United States of America versus Caroline Ellison. You see this was taking place December 19th, 4:30 p.m. Honorable Ronnie Abrams. Little bit of the allocution. And so what happens here is all the parties come up, right? They all are brought in front of the podium or sit at their tables. And the judge is making sure both sides understand all of the terms and making sure the defendant specifically understands the terms. Because the judge doesn't want a defendant, in this case, Caroline Ellison, to be bullied into a plea from her prosecutors or to not really understand what's going on. Or to have her defense attorneys just say, you got to take this deal. Doesn't matter what it is, just sign it. Right? The judge is going to say, are you really guilty? Did you really do all this stuff? Do you understand the consequences of this? Like, you're going to go to prison for a long time, potentially. Do you want to do this? She said this during her presentation, or this was submitted to the court. She says, Judge, because remember, in order to plead guilty, you actually have to be guilty. You got to actually have done something. Be guilty in fact. And the judge wants to hear a factual basis for your guilt. If you go up and you say, I'd love to plead guilty because I'd like to take the blame for the murder so my son goes free. The judge says, well, did you murder him? No. Okay. Well, then you can't plead guilty for him. Sorry. So let's see what she said. She says that from 2019 and to 2020, I was aware that Alameda was provided access to a borrowing facility on FTX.com. And she's in a hedge fund, right? So she's not supposed to get access to that. That's the cryptocurrency exchange that was run by Bankman. I understood that FTX, this is Caroline speaking, I understand that FTX executives had implemented special settings on Alameda's FTX.com account that permitted Alameda to maintain negative balances in various fiat currencies and cryptocurrencies. That's not good. Not supposed to have negative balances. In practice terms, this arrangement permitted Alameda access to an unlimited line of credit without being required to post collateral, without having to pay interest on negative balances, and without being subject to margin calls. It's like a bunch of free money that you can do whatever you want with. No consequences at all. She says that I understood that if Alameda's FTX accounts had any significant negative balances, it meant that Alameda was borrowing funds that FTX's customers had deposited onto the exchange. Oh, man. There it is right there. She knew, like they knew exactly what it was. That's customer money. When I was co-CEO and then CEO of Alameda, Caroline says, I understood that Alameda had made numerous large illiquid venture investments and had lent money to Mr. Bankman-Fried and other FTX executives. I also understood that Alameda had financed the investments with short-term and open-term loans worth several $1 billion from external lenders in the cryptocurrency. All right, so this is her factual basis. This is what she's telling the court. This is what she's probably going to be testifying about against SBF. She says that there were lenders in and around June 2020. I agreed with others to borrow several billion dollars from FTX to repay those loans. Those billions of dollars are customer funds. I understood that FTX would need to use customer funds to finance its loans to Alameda. I also understood that many FTX customers invested in crypto derivatives and that most FTX customers did not expect that FTX would lend out their digital asset holdings and fiat currency deposits to Alameda in this fashion. From in and around July 2022 through at least October 2022, Caroline says, I agreed with SBF and others to provide materially misleading financial statements to Alameda's board. In furtherance of this agreement, we prepared certain quarterly balance sheets, and we concealed the extent of Alameda's borrowing and the billions of dollars in loans that Alameda had made to FTX and related parties. Caroline says, I also understood that FTX had not disclosed to FTX equity investors that Alameda could borrow a potentially unlimited amount from FTX, thereby putting customer assets at risk. I agreed with SBF and others not to publicly disclose the true relationship between Alameda and FTX. In other words, I am happy to cover it up with you. I also understood that SBF and others were involved. Here's where Caroline says, I am truly sorry for what I did. I knew that it was wrong, and I want to apologize for my actions to the affected customers of FTX, lenders to Alameda, and investors in FTX. Since FTX and Alameda collapsed in November 2022, I have worked hard to assist with the recovery of assets for the benefit of customers and to cooperate with the government's investigation. Caroline says, I am here today to accept responsibility for my actions by pleading guilty. The judge says, you mentioned that you knew what you were doing was wrong. Is that right, Caroline? Did you also know that it was illegal? Caroline says, yes, I did. I knew that it was illegal. All of that was courtesy of Inner City Press, the full document. Don't know where it is, but thank you to Inner City Press for those screenshots. And you can see sort of what it sounded like. Now, all of that, of course, was pre-prepared. Her lawyers drafted up the entire allocution and it all got submitted, or she read it into the record. Don't know. It was all done under seal and we don't have the full transcript, but it indicates that Caroline is going to be working with SDNY, the Southern District of New York prosecutors, to go after SBF in full. So he's got no additional allies who are going to be coming out of the fold to protect him. It seems like, at least maybe on the inside of FTX. Outside of FTX, we'll wait and see. Of course, we will continue to cover this. Thank you for subscribing and liking this video wherever it is you're watching it, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, and so let's jump into our next segment on the day and talk about the World Economic Forum and Zelensky, because he's joining a club. The World Economic Forum is going to be meeting and hosting a familiar face. Zelensky in Ukraine is going to be joining them in 2023. In fact, he announced that he was going to also be meeting with BlackRock, Larry Fink, to talk a lot about post-war reconstruction. The story goes that Zelensky will be meeting with the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab is this individual right here. We'll take a look at the announcement and remind ourselves that Zelensky also appeared in Davos in 2022, and he made a pitch to the World Economic Forum and a lot of the business investors, allegedly, who are part of that organization. So we'll see what 2022 looked like. We've got several additional clips from Klaus Schwab, one where he sat down and talked with the Pfizer CEO, and another where he is telling us about his vision for education, young global leaders, and a global transition. Before we check in with Vandana Shiva, who is a person who can share her experience about how all this went down when their policies were hitting in India. But let's get started with a familiar video from Klaus Schwab, founder of the World Economic Forum. He tells us the world is changing, and none of us are safe unless we all do what he says.
I created the community of global shapers as a means, as a force to shape our common future. This engagement of the young generation never has been more important than now, where we have to face the consequences of the pandemic of COVID-19 for creating a more resilient, a more sustainable, and a more inclusive world. You are calling for the international community to safeguard vaccine equity. To respond to COVID-19 and prevent future health crises. Nobody will be safe if not everybody is vaccinated.
Nobody will be safe unless everybody is vaccinated. Do you see how angry he is? Look at that fist. He's very upset. Let's try it again.
And prevent future health crises. Nobody will be safe if not everybody is vaccinated. Young people, you are rallying behind the global wealth tax to manage the alarming surge in wealth inequality. You are calling for programs that help you and young progressive voices join government and become policymakers. To limit global warming, you are demanding to halt to coal, oil, and gas exploration. You are asking firms to replace any corporate board directors who is unwilling to transition to cleaner energy sources.
Wipe out board directors who are unwilling to change to clean energy sources. They're penetrating governments. They're penetrating board member seats in big corporations. They're infecting their tentacles all over the whole world.
You are championing an open internet and a 2 trillion digital access plan to bring the world online and prevent internet shutdown. And you are...
Prevent internet shutdown. Wow. Do you think that's where they're coming next? Prevent an internet shutdown. Uh-oh, that sounds scary.
Presenting new ways to minimize the spread of misinformation. And you want to combat dangerous extremist views in the internet.
Yes, the internet. Combat that extremist view and misinformation.
On stakeholder capitalism.
Buy my book.
Will be the key.
Buy my book, Klaus Schwab. All right. So that's Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum. If you had a list of all sort of a bunch of bad ideas in one, he just went through all of them and checked the box. Well, Zelensky's going over there to have a conversation and speak at Davos because everybody does. In China, President Xi shows up there, right? Our politicians show up there. Everybody shows up there to kiss the ring. It's embarrassing, but this is what's happening. So December 28th, Zelensky prepares for the Ukraine's participation in Davos. President Zelensky said his government is preparing to participate in the WEF in Davos in January. And he again spoke with BlackRock CEO Larry Fink about the post-war rebuilding effort. Specialists of this company are already helping Ukraine to structure the fund and reconstruction of the state, said Zelensky. He had a video call with Fink back in September, said in his evening address to the nation. He didn't say whether he's going there in person or not. He also spoke to Giorgia Meloni, Italian Prime Minister, also about strengthening Ukrainian air defenses and so on. So the war continues, and that's about all we get from Zelensky and the announcement that he's going to be going over to the World Economic Forum. But this is not that unusual because Zelensky has been there before. In fact, this is a clip. The last time Zelensky was there, this is what the translation sounded like.
I think such sanctions against Russia still do not exist, and they should. An embargo on Russian oil, a complete blockade of all Russian banks, all without exception, total abandonment of the Russian IT sector, and complete cessation of trade with the aggressor. You need to set a precedent for the complete exit of all foreign businesses from the Russian market so that your brands are not associated with war crimes and that war criminals do not use your offices, accounts, and goods in their bloody interests.
So he's been there. A lot of the same speech that we've heard from him, right? Stop Russia, give us everything we want, and everything will be fine. But as we've talked about, the World Economic Forum is a massive, massive entity. And they have all, if you did a comparison of global GDP that was under the umbrella of corporations versus the global GDP under a particular nation state, and you assembled all the GDP, all the economic throughput of a corporation, and you assembled them into one organization, you'd get something that looked a lot like the World Economic Forum. And if you assemble it and do the math, you would say that the corporations control as much GDP as China, arguably maybe the United States, right? It is a massively powerful organization. And they know that. And so they're moving pieces around all across the world like they're little chess pawns. One area where there's a lot of opportunity is in Ukraine, because there's going to be a lot of money that needs to pile in there for reconstruction. This Ukrainian MP is sharing her vision for how to rebuild Ukraine after the war.
Ukraine has brought that message in person here too.
Everyone does something to bring the victory together.
MPs whose constituencies have been flattened want reparations from Russia to reconstruct their country.
We are asking business to invest into Ukraine because it will be a very, fast-growing market when we start the rebuilding the infrastructure. I mean, you can just tell me if you want to rebuild a museum, we'll find you a museum to rebuild. If you want to help a school, just tell us the region. We'll, show you how many schools were ruined in this region. I mean, you can help libraries. You can bring, medicine. I mean, whatever you want, we can organize.
Whatever you need, even Starbucks, doesn't matter. We'll fund it because they've got basically a blank check from the whole entire world. The United States is funding it to a lot. $110 billion can really go a long way. And so that's presumably what they're going to be communicating to all of the business entities there at Davos in 2023. But these are some of the things that they talk about. If you're not familiar with the World Economic Forum, you can see here's a conversation between Klaus Schwab and this fella, Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. You see these two individuals are sitting there in front of their logo in these very nice futuristic space chairs, and they're having a conversation about the COVID.
Do we have to expect prolongation of the pandemic, or at least the epidemic, or how would you foresee the future?
Yes.
Or do we have to, and I may immediately ask a second question, should we be afraid of another virus? And what does it mean?
Yes, you have to be
how
afraid
we,
all the time,
create
indefinitely.
the necessary resilience, personally, nationally, globally?
Never
On the first question,
not be afraid.
I don't think that the virus will disappear. We are not certain about it, but most scientists agree that the virus will be around forever. But the real question that everybody is asking is not this. It is, can we get our lives back? Can we live normal economic activity, normal social activity with the virus presence? And the answer is yes. I think we can. Absent a variant that we have not foreseen right now, that can happen, but it's not the most likely scenario. I think we have the means right now, very effective vaccines. As the virus mutates, we have the ability to follow up and let's say update the vaccines and to have treatments. With that, people should not die anymore, even if we are not following the way that we are following the social measures in the past. Now, on the second question, shall we are afraid of a new very different virus that would come, and to have now all these examples with the monkey pox, I don't think we should be afraid, but I think we should be prepared. And that should, even the little fear that we have, that should ease it. And if we are prepared, I think science will win.
Science.
Now, some people may argue you have now these new treatments. Some people may argue, why should I get vaccinated if there is a treatment? Well, how would you respond?
Because I think the goal is not for you to get sick and then treat you. The goal is to prevent the sickness. And that will maximize your chances to do well. That will maximize the chances of people that you love not to get infected. You vaccinate not only for yourself, you vaccinate also to protect society, and particularly to protect those that you love the most, because they are the ones that you are together.
Yeah, and as Klaus Schwab just said a couple of minutes ago, no one is safe unless we're all doing his bidding.
What do you foresee? I mean, most of we I think we set the standard because in Switzerland, for those who do not know, there are no restrictions anymore. So we set the standard that we require vaccination. Now, how many vaccinations do we need in the future?
1 million. As
That's
many
a very
as,
good question.
as many
And
as
I
it
think,
takes. Never ending.
First of all, I think we will need vaccinations in the future, but also I'm concerned that the compliance of the population with the recommendations of the experts will not be very high. More people did the first dose, and then lesser did the second, and then lesser will do the third and the fourth. And so for that reason, we need to find a solution that makes it easy for people to get. And I think this solution
is it hard?
The number one priority is to have a vaccine that lasts a year. So once people know that it is once a year, I do it every autumn, for example, fall, I think that will improve the amount of people that are getting the vaccine.
And I think there are also certain attempts to combine it with a anti-flu vaccine.
That is another very good way to make it, to improve compliance. If someone thinks that I'm going to go to the doctor or to the pharmacy, but at least with one shot I will get two, flu and that also will increase the number.
Yeah.
So these are the things.
Bundle. Buy one,
it's
get
very
one
difficult
free.
to improve the efficacy right now. It's very, very high. But what you can improve it is how convenient it is and how can last the efficacy for a longer period of time. And
Yeah,
we
probably
both,
put
the
it in
first thing that
drive-thrus.
we exchanged when we set the agreement was that it's going to be an oral agreement for the next couple of months because you don't have time to sign contracts.
All right. So then he just pats himself on the back for getting things done so quickly. So that's what they're talking about, right? They're talking about all of these policy changes and they're not implementing them democratically. In fact, they're sort of inserting them. They are accommodating these changes in the institutional infrastructure that exists all throughout the world. So they're not going through the democratic institutions and we go vote for these changes. No, they're going into corporations, they're penetrating cabinets, they are developing young global leaders who are going to mature into their little pawns. Klaus Schwab tells us more about this when he unveiled his educational plot.
We put emphasis
Very loud, sorry.
on what I said before.
That wasn't my fault. Let's start that over again. Klaus Schwab on educating away challenges to his eternal reign.
We put emphasis on what I said before, public-private partnerships, which we accompany. So when we define a project like our global educational initiative, I just describe it in a second. We have, under the leadership of Cisco and many other companies, practically all the big names, we try to revolutionize the educational system of Jordan, Egypt, and now Burundi, by working together
Egypt.
with the local authorities. We work also together with UNESCO, not only to equip the schools, but to put to retrain the teachers,
Retrain
to
the
put
teachers.
new curricula into place. So
Retrain the teachers, new curriculums, teach the kids the things we want them to know so that they don't grow into climate denying racist bigots who are insurrectionists who love free speech. What kind of a weirdo would love that?
we work together with we accompany those companies. We do not, such a difference to the Clinton initiative, which mainly, and which is a good thing, which asks companies to pledge some money to make a commitment and then to come back and to report. We are with the initiative from the beginning to the end. But there's one other.
So the Clinton Global Initiative, right? They're good. They throw a lot of money at problems. But the thing with them is they ask a corporation to pledge. Like, do you want to stop climate change? Like, yeah, what do you want from us? They're like, well, why don't you pledge $1 million? Oh, we'll pledge $1 million. Great. Klaus Schwab says, no, that's not good enough. We want to take that money and we want to implement it. We want new curriculums. We want new teachers. We want board members who deny climate science to get out of there. We want environmental, social, global. We want misinformation battles. We want corporate rule. And we're going to start with the schools so that they don't have this perverted idea about a Bill of Rights or something like that. That's disgusting. So we've got that. Now they're starting young with the kids. And of course, from the kids, All of this then goes into young global leaders. And many people, right, like Justin Trudeau, that little dictator, and others, are part of this entourage, part of this organization. This is a montage of the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders program. Klaus Schwab thrilled to be indoctrinating the next level of leaders that he controls.
Come out being thought leaders, great organizational leaders.
Our young global leaders are selected by the top editors-in-chief around the world.
After our own internal review, we work with Hydrogen Struggles externally in 65 offices around the world to vet the shortlisted candidates. And finally, they go to a selection committee chaired by Her Majesty Queen Rania of Jordan and prominent business leaders and politicians and media leaders.
Around 150 are chosen each year, of whom about 125 become active, and they go to Davos and they go to regional meetings.
I benefit.
So we just pick the people that we think are going to be great, and they're just going to fall in line like good little foot soldiers.
From young global leader, early days. When I listened to Bill Gates, and Bill Clinton, and George Soros, these guys, at that time we don't have that many people.
A lot of folks here knew each other already, and my hope was to meet them for the first time, and it's going pretty well.
We can easily address taboos. We can tell politicians how things really are, which obviously once we're 10 years further and we're all running countries or huge
Once we're 10 years further and we're all running countries,
companies or whatever, it might become slightly more difficult. Countries or huge once we're taboos, we can tell politicians how things really are, which obviously once we're 10 years further and we're all running countries or huge companies or whatever, it might become slightly more difficult.
There was an initiative launched called the Public Leadership Initiative by YGLs, and the aim was to try to capture the interest of young global leaders, no matter which sector that they are from, to potentially serve their countries. We've already had a number of people that have gone through that program who have then decided to run for office.
My commitment will be to add value. We'll be part of the Young Leaders Initiative.
This is Merkel,
Tony Blair.
They were all, even President Putin.
Vladimir.
They were all young global leaders before. Prime Minister.
They were all young global leaders. Weird. And they're at war now. So Zelensky is going to go meet with the WEF. Putin has already been a young global leader who hung out with the WEF. What the heck is all this going on? Why are they at war with each other? They're part of the same club.
Of Ireland, Leo Varadkar, particularly welcome because you are also one of our young global leaders.
Sheikh Hamdan is, despite his young age, chairman of the Executive Council of Dubai, the highest government authority in the Emirate. Very proud to say that His Highness is also a young global leader of the World Economic Forum.
The leader of the UK right now, David Cameron, was named the young global leader in 2006.
Mamuka Bakadze, the Prime Minister of Georgia and a young global leader.
Haakon of Norway. Haakon is the Crown Prince of Norway. He's also a member of our Young Global Leaders alumni community.
President Calderon, you had been selected in 1990.
For young global leaders, they got all of the world leaders, right? And some reason we're still killing, everybody wants to kill each other in this world, even though they're all basically, I think, on the same team, it feels like. Here is another clip from Klaus Schwab. Schwab says that it's very important to capitalize on the upcoming international chaos, provides a lot of opportunity for the World Economic Forum to recreate and to reset the whole world.
Of course. If we look at all the challenges, we can speak about a multi-crisis, an economic, a political, a social, an ecological, an institutional crisis. But actually, what we have to confront is a deep, systemic, and structural restructuring of our world.
Restructuring.
And this will take some time. And the world will look differently after we have gone through this transition process.
After we've gone through the transition process that none of us ever voted for, that apparently he's in charge of as a little dictator.
Politically, the driving forces for this political transformation, of course, is the transition into a multipolar world, which has a tendency to make our world much more fragmented. And for these reasons, events like this one, the G20, and so on, are the very important connectors to avoid a too great segmentation.
They're going to recreate the world as they see fit, and they expect all of us to just play along. Other people have seen how this works. This woman is named Vandana Shiva. She's an Indian scholar born 1952, environmental activist, food sovereignty advocate, eco-feminist, anti-globalization author. She's written more than 20 books. She's often referred to as Gandhi of grain for her activism. She's a leader and a board member on the International Forum on Globalization and is a figure of an anti-globalization movement. She wants traditional practices, and she's probably a socialist. So let's listen to what she had to say about the World Economic Forum and how some of these policies impact India.
And if you notice, my country was the first where they made cash illegal. 2016, digitalization was forced on the country. 8 o'clock in the evening announced midnight, cash was illegal, the big notes. And 70% of the economy crashed. This digitalization is now going all over the world, and there's a war on cash. They call it war on cash because cash is merely a medium of exchange. It has no value in itself. It's just a promise. You read the dollar note, it says, I promise to pay the bearer. When it's digital, even a credit card, you're giving rents to the global financial system. But when it's cryptocurrency in the hands of algorithms, in the hands of big tech, they will do what is happening in China. Create social credit system to decide a new caste system. And you might have also followed that while all this has been happening, the founder of the World Economic Forum,
Klaus,
did a book called The Great Reset.
Yeah.
On how to deal with the COVID crisis. And everything we're seeing unfold is part of that Great Reset. But an element of that Great Reset is you will own nothing. Now, I'm a believer in the commons. And it would be so good if all land was a commons, if all seed was a commons, if food was a commons, if health was a commons, so that we had strong public health systems, strong community health system, deep knowledge about being healthy. But when Klaus Schwab says, you will own nothing, he's saying we'll own it all. That's why you have Gates, not just owning the seed, wanting to own our food. One, of course, controls the health, and now owning land. This, if ever there was a time for humanity to wake up, now is the time.
Time to wake up is what she says, and I think she's dead right about that. So that, my friends, is the update on Klaus Schwab. We've got Zelensky's going over there to kiss the ring, as most other global leaders have, right? They all do it. President Xi did it. We'll see what happens with the next round of our leaders, all going to the World Economic Forum because evidently they run things now. But we, of course, will continue to cover all of the Klaus Schwab updates and latest. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, that is it for us on the show for the day. We covered some good ground. A little bit of a slow news day, but we still hit some FTX stuff. Got to see the plea deal for Caroline Ellison, and then we had a little World Economic Forum a trip down memory lane on some of those. Those people are still out and about, and they'll be having another forum next year, which of course we'll cover. But let's see what you have to say about all of this and more. And I saw a couple very generous super chats come in from our friends on YouTube, and we're grateful for that. I see Texas Ditch Doctors over on Locals, Paul Blart 270s over on Rumble, along with Rand. We have Peter Tags over there, member of the Publix over on Rumble as well. We had a couple super chats today. Thank you very much. Ray K's here. Ray K says, if anyone hasn't woken up yet, all you need to know about the war in Ukraine is Zelensky is WEF. Honk for freedom. Honk, honk. I remember the honks. I miss the honking. The honking will continue until freedom improves. Remember that? That was a lot of fun. Yeah. If anyone hasn't woken up yet, here's what you need to know. I think they all are. Isn't everybody just World Economic Forum right now? Like everybody? I'm not, I promise. But it feels like everybody else is. Good Lord. Peter says, why is no one on LawTube talking about the fact that the J6 committee actually made criminal referrals? I had to learn about it through a YouTube video recommending me a video from the worst lawyer. I don't know, Peter. Honestly, you know, we haven't been talking about it because the whole thing feels like it's a giant sham that nobody's interested in. I don't know that anybody's interested in it, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I've got nobody asks about it. Nobody wants to hear about it. I think everybody's just kind of over it. That's probably the only reason. I don't think there's like a grand conspiracy or something. It's just like, what are we going to talk about? I don't know. I guess, you know, if the DOJ files an indictment, then we could go through it, but we've covered it enough. What else is there to talk about? I guess is my take on it. But if there's if people want to dive into more J6 stuff, we can. I haven't had a lot of people really express any interest in it. It feels like it's all just sort of like fizzled out. It's just like, really? All right. We've got IB says, every time I hear Klaus Schwab's voice, I buy ammo. That's a good policy. You probably brought a lot of them here today then, a lot of additional rounds, because we had, I think, 4 or 5 clips of him. Not a bad strategy. It's like, you know, every time there's a commercial, you do a push-up or 2 push-ups to like get into good push-up shape. It's like that. Just buy more ammo. Probably expensive show. Thank you for that, IB. Yeah, good luck. Just Cause says that's a good move. Definitely a good move. It's a good system you have in place. All right. And so those were some of the super chats. Thank you, my friends, who sent those in. We also had, I wanted to try something else. Can I? No, don't know how to do that. All right, well, so let's go over to Twitter and let's say hello to our Twitter friends. If there is anybody watching the broadcast over there, let's see how many we've got. It's probably going to be out of control. Holy crap, we got 5 people over there. It's out of control. There's 5 viewers watching on Twitter right now. Shout out to all 5 of you. If I knew your names, I'd call you out one at a time. Let's see who's down here. Paul Mino is in the house. He says, you don't get it, but it's really funny. Robert Gouveia. I don't get it. Although this guy, I don't get it. I don't know who that is. Although this guy sort of looks like Ron. What's the Ron guy's name? I don't know who that is. Ron from Parks and Recreation. Burgundy. Ron Burgundy. That's his name, right? Ron Burgundy. That's who I was thinking of. The Woodsmith guy. Swanson. Ron Swanson. That's the other one. Burgundy's Anchorman, right? Yeah, that's right. I got my Rons mixed up. Thank you to Paul Mino. If you're not following Paul Mino, you're missing spicy memes. Jarbot is in the house. He says, okay, the FTX ploy to regulate the casino was all designed to collapse faith in Bitcoin and to roll into CBDCs that they're currently testing. This would be an end to individual freedom in the US. Bitcoin will never be replaced. Good comment on that. Yeah, so it's sort of like a honeypot type of a thing. Like honeypot's not the right term, but it's, yeah, you bring everybody on to the ship and then you sink the ship and you sour crypto for everybody else. Or you just take advantage of it. Like if it was really successful, you know, maybe the CIA has a very successful crypto exchange now. They own it. Confirmed from Warhamster, Christian Everdell did represent Ghislaine Maxwell. I thought so. I knew that name was familiar. That's the same guy, right? That's the guy that we saw earlier. That's Christian Everdell. Good lawyer. Although he wasn't that active in Ghislaine's case. In Ghislaine's case, there was Bobby Sternheim did a lot more. Oh, we've got Brenda's in the house, eating some popcorn, joining us over there. A couple more replies. Yeah, this is I think Elon commented on this meme. And a lot of people got in trouble, or a lot of people were saying that he should, you know, basically end himself because he posted a meme that was offensive to some people. But all right, my friends, those are our great comments over on Twitter. We're up to 13 people now. This is out of control. It's going to break the stream. We're in double digits now. I mean, we haven't hit double digits before. We're now in double digits on Twitter. Out of control. All right, my friends. And so let's see, since it's kind of a shorter show, let's take a couple locals comments while we're here. I see over on Robert Goulet is an entertainer. Robert Gouveia, French, Gouveia. Allison Cole is here, I see on YouTube. Ligma is also in the house. Jonathan, I have this chat I can pull up here. Gold is fiat. There is only a fraction of physical gold compared to all gold sold. I read a lot about gold in the book called The Bitcoin Standard. I recommend that book. Soko is here, says, great work, Robert. Always enjoy watching your shows. Thanks for being here, Soko. Appreciate you hanging out with us. The Jaya says, don't go yet. I just got here. Don G says, love you. Love you back, Don. Don G. Robert Gouveia says his name is Robert Goulet. I think that's an actual person, though, right? Ray Epps is in the chat. Playing Hooky says it's a chocolate night. It's a beautiful chocolate night. Lean is here with hearts. Hearts right back to you, Lean. Thanks for being here. All right, let's do a refresh on the locals comments and see if there are any. Oh, here's a link. Yeah, we got a couple comments in here. We have a link from James Cutbirth. He's sharing with us a link to Mitch McConnell. Let's see what Mitch McConnell says.
It's very disturbing, and it's driven by the three.
Here, take it from, this has come from Social Security Works. Take it from Republican hero Ronald Reagan. Social Security has absolutely nothing to do with the deficit. Reagan destroys McConnell's Social Security lies. This is from 2018.
What's going on with the debt?
It's very disturbing, and it's driven by the three big entitlement programs that are very popular: Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid.
Social Security has nothing to do with the deficit. Social Security is totally funded by the payroll tax levied on employer and employee.
That's 70% of what we spend every year. The subject we were just discussing, the funding of the government, is about 30% of what we spend.
If you reduce the outgo of Social Security, that money would not go into the general fund to reduce a deficit. It would go into the Social Security Trust Fund. So Social Security has nothing to do with balancing a budget or erasing or lowering the deficit.
Interesting point there, Ronald. The politicians just make up everything, don't they? Oh, gosh. Yeah, they do. We had another one from Heather says, how in the world is he put into their custody if they could be wrapped up in their case? Weren't the parents getting payments from him? So does this mean if they go after his parents, they won't have anything to bail themselves out with? Yeah, I mean, if they've liquidated all their assets for their son, that is a risk. That is a certain gamble. No doubt about that. But it's their baby boy. So what are they going to do? Scott is here. He says, let the truth flow, my brother. Good to see you here, Scott. Thanks for your support. We try. Sergeant Bob says, USA did fine for years without these socialists like Schwab. Now he's going to get Zelensky in his pocket. Three Girlie says, every time I hear Klaus Schwab, it reminds me of Hitler, Lenin, and Stalin. He's not a socialist. He's a communist. And hearing him talk to the youth reminds me of Hitler Youth. Downright slimy. Yeah, it's pretty gross behavior. The whole ideology. But he's got a lot of power. Schwab makes me think of this clip of his this is his idea of the future. This is a Coneheads clip from 1993. Looks like a very dystopian future. Miss Lucky's in the house from Sergeant Bob says, Pfizer guy loves sheeple and also loves totalitarian governments. Here's Three Girlies. She says, Klaus Schwab pretends to be God. He pretends that he knows how to deal with viruses and illness. As far as I know, he's not even a doctor. He pretends to know what he's talking about in hopes that people will believe him. Sad thing is, right now, it seems like a lot of government officials are believing him. Why in the world would you do those things? All right, so I'll read that after we'll go to the after party at this moment in time because these are some locals comments only. But those are the tremendous things that we talk about over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And so, Three Girlies, we'll come back to you here in a short minute. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going to wrap it up right there. And I want to thank you for being a part of the show. Before we jump on out of here, thank you to our sponsors. Of course, our law firm, the R&R Law Group. If you know anybody in Arizona who has been charged with a crime, that's what we do. rrlawaz.com. We help good people find safety, clarity, and hope. Any type of criminal charge in the state of Arizona, anything ranging from traffic violations all the way up to major felony drug offenses and other types of felonies, everything and anything in between. We're very good at what we do. We're passionate about the work. 480-787-0394 is our law firm. And of course, don't forget to check out our friends out at 4patriots.com. Go on over there. Anything in the store on your first order, 10% off. Use code Robert. Amazing products and organization. Thank you to the mods who mod down the forts for us. Big shout outs go to Vientikis, our friend K Bean, Just Cause, Lean is in the house, along with Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, and Zulu comes by every now and then. And I saw Geomancy was in the house. He's got a YouTube channel if you want to go check out Geomancy. And they keep things nice and orderly for us, and we very much appreciate and love our mods. But that, my friends, is it for us. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for a little bit of an after party. And if you'd like to join us, you know where to go. It's free. You don't even have to pay anything. You just can't chat if it's free. But if you want to leave a comment, join our community. It's a ton of fun. Crystal Love says, anyone see where Zelensky's wife went on a $40,000 shopping spree in Paris while they were coming here to beg for money and assistance? Kinda sus is what Crystal Love says. Kinda sus. Yeah, a little bit. Here, let's pull that one up on the screen. Yeah, I did see that. You know, and I don't know those stories. I didn't look into the story. I just saw the headline. I don't know. But it is kind of sus. So is the outfit. So is the meeting with the president in a war outfit. But we've all got parts to play, I guess. He's got his part to play. All right, so that's over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com is where we're going next. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. So if I don't see you over there, I do hope to see you right back here tomorrow, same time, same place, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Locals, I'll see you in 30 seconds. Everybody else, have a tremendous evening. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.